Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our continuation of Finding Your Path, an exploration, the personal exploration of Mesilas Yesharim, the Path of the Just by Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. Just to catch everybody up, it's a bit of a while since we've met. The Mesilas Yesharim gives us a path to ascend the spiritual ladder, to become close to God, and he has very specific levels. The level we're talking about now is a level which is called Zehirut, or watchfulness, variously translated as watchfulness, carefulness. The basic overarching principle of the midah, of the character trait of Zehirut, is to think and to analyze your actions to make sure that you're not doing something that Hashem doesn't want. As we said many times before, the nature of a person is to feel that he's naturally a good person. There's this letter from Al Capone that apparently he said that he really didn't believe he was a bad person. Very, very few people actually believe what they're doing is evil. The most evil people in the world believe they're doing things which are acceptable, even desirable. And so it takes an outside force for us to come to terms with the fact that not everything that we're doing may be right. In fact, maybe much of what we're doing is not right. So the principle of motivating, or the motivation of that awareness, is called zehirus, watchfulness, carefulness, thinking, examining. And I'm not going to go through all the details he described up to now as what are the component parts of that analysis of one's behavior. What we've been talking about up to now is the three levels of motivation that would incite a person, encourage a person to make that examination of his actions. So we said the highest level of those people on the highest level, and I don't know how many people in our generation are on that level. I certainly can't claim to be on that level. Halavai, I'm on the lowest level. But the highest level for sure is this level of what I call it hurts to be avis. Meaning, if a person is concerned, if his entire life is concerned with perfection, that he desires perfection, then anything else less than perfection in his divine service, in his closeness to God, bothers him. In other words, we've all seen these orange juice packets which says 99% pure. So to a person who wants to be on the highest level, 99% pure means not pure, it means impure. Because the person who is concerned, motivated by perfection, will only, anything less than that is unacceptable. That's the highest level. As I say, it's a very, very high level in awareness of what motivates a person to want to examine his actions. The second level is the level of the Beinonim. He says these are the intermediate class of people who are motivated by something much more, let's say, lowly, which is the idea that a person doesn't like other people to do better than him. We see this typically when somebody in your class is this nerd who everybody thinks is going to be, this nerdy guy who turns out to be Bill Gates or whoever it is. What's his Tesla? What's his name? Elon Musk, or some guy that seemed like a bit off the wall and a bit weird, and somehow now he's a multi-billionaire. So if that bothers a person, that this person got ahead of him in this world where things are transitory and ultimately valueless, so al-achas kam v'kama, how much the more when it comes to real things of true and everlasting value, being close to Hashem. So surely what should motivate a person on this lower level is the fact that if he doesn't do absolutely everything he can, he will find that other people who he thought weren't particularly special, sitting, so to speak, in the front row of the stalls in Olam Haba, in the world to come, and he'll be somewhere up in what they call in England the gods, right? The cheap seats up the top where you can barely see people. So that's a motivation. Now the lowest motivation, and as I say, this is the motivation that really speaks to most of us, is the idea that a person doesn't want to get hurt. This is a very un-PC kind of concept nowadays. It's very difficult to talk to people about punishment. We're in a generation which is very weak, and the whole idea that a person gets punished for not doing what Hashem wants is something which is very difficult to talk about nowadays, but nevertheless the Mesilas Yesharim does speak about that. And really, maybe we could understand punishment in the excuse me, in the context of the lack of closeness to Hashem. Everything, only that which Hashem wishes to exist, exists. When a person does an Aveira, when he does a sin, essentially he's buying into non-reality. Because on the ultimate level, nothing can exist unless Hashem wants it to exist. So therefore, when he does an Aveira, so to speak, he's cut out a part of his reality. He's removed himself from what truly is. And that in itself is the greatest punishment. So that punishment is basically buying into non-reality, like a Brooklyn Bridge kind of purchase. So, but the punishment is a real punishment, and the pain is a real pain. And this is where we got to. And that's where we're going to start off today. So that which encourages the majority of people, that is the idea of reward and punishment themselves. To see how far the din, Hashem's judgment, actually goes. That if a person really would think about this, how precise, how exacting is the examination of Hashem's din, of his judgment on a person. This is something that should give him constant fear. Ki, mi, yamod b'yom adin. Because who truly can stand on the day of judgment? Who mi yitztak lifnei boro. And who can really justify himself in front of his Creator? Ba'asher hashkafoso, seeing as Hashem's vision penetrates, is medakdekis, is absolutely precise. Al kol davar katan or gadol, on everything, be it small or large, Hashem sees it, He weighs it, He judges it, and He accounts, He gives out either reward or punishment for that. V'chein omru Rabbeinu Zichron L'Rocha. Similarly, our sages say in Chagiga, umagid la'odam ma'aseicho, that the person will be told in his conversation. And what does this mean? The person on the day of Din, it will be repeated to him. His conversation. What conversation? So the Gemara says, afilu, it's a Gemara in Yevamos, afilu sicha kala, even a light-headed conversation. I think what it probably means is a flirtatious conversation. Shebein ishu be'ishtoi, that's between a man and his wife. Magidnim lo la'odam b'shas hadin, even something which is an extremely, say, light aveira, that maybe something was said which was not 100%, but seeing as that's between man and wife, it's not he's talking to some other lady, it's also something which is private, but nevertheless, ad kedei kach, until this, that's the extremity, that's the extent of how much Hashem is medaktek, is, how do you say, particular is not a good word, particular is, it's how fine his judgment is, how exacting, I think the word is. Od Amro, it also says of Svivav nis'ara ma'od, around Hashem, says in Yevamos, around Hashem, I'm sorry, no, that's not in Yevamos, this is in Yeshaya. Around Hashem, it's extremely stormy. Malamish HaKadosh Baruch Hu medakdek im chasidav b'chut hasara. To say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is medakdek to the width of a hair's breadth. Meaning, the mashal here is that of a hurricane. I'm sure you've all seen pictures of a hurricane. Around the hurricane, in the center of the hurricane, so to speak, is the still center, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But immediately next to that still center, that is the most stormy place. The closer a person comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so the stormier it is. Stormier meaning the more precise, the more exacting is the examination, and the higher the standards that are expected. And we see that Avram was also punished. Avram for things that we would consider to be almost negligible. Avram Avinu was called his Ahuv, he was beloved to his Creator. Ad Shekosiv Alav, as it says in Yeshaya, Avraham o Avi. Avraham, the one I love, my beloved. Nevertheless, lo polot min adin, he was not exempted from judgment. Mipnei devarim kalim, because of things which were light, which were seemingly superficial, shelo yedakdek bahem, in his failure to be precise and careful about them. For example, Acha Omar, because Avraham Avinu said, B'mei Eida, Kodesh Baruch Hu told, asked Hashem, how will I know that you will rescue us from Mitzrayim? Omar Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hay Chayecho. So Hashem said to Avraham Avinu, Chayecho, literally by your life. It's an expression of an oath. Yoda Teida, you will surely know. Ki ger yeh zarecha, because your seed will be strangers in Mitzrayim, because Avraham Avinu questioned Hashem's hashgacha, his supervision, his divine supervision. He, in a sense, showed a fractional lack of bitachon, of trust in Hashem. Val shekoras baris im Avimelech, and also because he made a pact with Avimelech, below tzivui shel mokom. Hashem did not instruct him to do such a thing, and so for doing something like that, he was punished. Now I want to go back and examine. I see here in the notes here. If you go back, he sort of talks about the Omek Hadin, how deep is the judgment. Omek Hadin. Why is the din greater when it comes to Hashem's tzaddikim? The reason is, he says, comes from Yechezkel Sana, Rabbi Yechezkel Sana. He says that the Tamad of Mishum Toivas Hashem Yisbarach Rachamav al Baruov. This is really a chesed of Hashem, that the din, the judgment, is so exacting. Kitzarich lo shuv el boiroi zach v'noki kamalach, that a person needs to return to Hashem when he's finished his time in this world, clean and pure as an angel. Voy, and woe lo, woe is the one, woe to him, lemi sheba v'chetov biyodo, who comes upstairs with his sins with him. Ulechein meitav HaKadosh Baruch Hu im chasidov, and this is why Hashem does good, an extra level of goodness to his chasidim. I don't mean chasidim in the terms of chasidim as opposed to litvaks. I mean those people on a very high level, those people who are doing more than the Shulchan Aruch demands of them, those people who go beyond the letter of the law. That's why Hashem, even though that's counterintuitive, that he seems to be tougher on them, the reason, this is really a kindness, because Hashem is medagdek imahem. He is exacting with them. For tovea mehem chatos b'lo, and he chooses, Hashem requires, punishes them in this world. Why? Kedei shetoshuv hanefesh nekia el boiro, in order that they can return their soul to their Creator in a pure state. A person doesn't seek yisurim, afflictions, troubles in this world, but if they come to him, he should understand they are for the purpose of cleansing him. And that's why we see very often that tzaddikim seem to suffer in this world more than people who are, let's say, not righteous, or even Rishoyim, even very evil people, seem to get away, so to speak, as they say in England, scot-free. That's not true. They don't get away scot-free. There's always a reckoning for everybody. But a person, if he suffers in this world, even though for sure that's not something one should invite upon oneself, but if a person is punished in this world, he should know that it's probably because it's a chesed of Hashem, that Hashem is cleansing him from whatever his sins are in this world, and it will allow him to go to the next world pure, in a state of purity, which is the way he should return. And also one has to add that for sure, whatever a person has to experience when he leaves this world to expunge the sins that he did in this world is infinitely more painful and less preferable than being able to pay for them, so to speak, down here. Yes, what was your question?
Hashem is exacting with Abraham, but it's his children that suffer. How did that fix Abraham?
That's a good question.
knowing that it's going to happen, that was his punishment?
I think that knowing that was going to happen is part of his punishment. That's a good point. I mean, there is a concept that we're all linked by this chain. We do tshuva on Yom Kippur for the chatoim that not only we did, that our forefathers did. So in a sense, we're all connected together in this great long chain called Klal Yisrael. So in a sense that this was also a punishment for Avraham Avinu. You're right that the knowledge that what he did would be visited upon his children, but in a sense, his children are him in a sense. They're part of him. Okay, so so that was one point I wanted to bring out, that this is really a chesed of Hashem. And then he says also, Mi amod b'yom hadin, u'mi yatzdik b'fnei boiro. Who can stand on the day of judgment and who can justify himself in front of his creation? So this is a note also from Or Yechezkel. And he says an interesting point. He says, L'choira, ostensibly, we've got two different things here. Who can stand in front, who will be able to stand on the day of judgment, and who will be able to justify himself in front of his Creator? So, miyamod b'din, b'yom din, who will be able to stand on the day of judgment? That is, who will be able to come out, exempt, innocent on the day of din. V'yizker legan Eden u'olam haba. That's the first level. The first level is very few people will be able to do that. Ach yitachin sheyotzev zakai b'din v'zoicher l'olam haba. It's possible, as we said, that maybe we'll have a person over there. He doesn't say this, I'm adding that his mitzvahs were greater than his aveiros, and he manages to pass the test, pass the examination. And he is oimed b'yom hadin. So even somebody who's oimed b'yom hadin, but he still has a higher level of examination. Ach einu zoicher liskarvus l'Shem Yisborach. But it could be that this person, it's an interesting concept this, even if he manages to pass the test, so to speak, but he can scrape through with a passing grade. He's not going to be close to Hashem. And it could be that even a person is oimed b'din, nevertheless Hashem will not desire him. As it says, Mi yatzdik nifnei boiro, liskois l'rotzoin Hashem Yisborach. Who is able to justify himself to be in that position that Hashem desires him? And for this reason we see, an interesting point, U'lechein matzinu daled kitoit, ein mekablim pleias shchina. Chazal teaches there are 4 groups of people who are not going to be worthy to receive the face of the Shechina. Now, the face of the Shechina is obviously it's a Kabbalistic concept where a person receives a certain revelation, a certain hiskaravus, closeness to Hashem. And those 4 groups, by the way, are leitzim, scoffers, people who make light of important matters, spiritual matters. Chanufim, people flatterers, people who flatter people falsely. Shkorim, the kita of shkorim, liars. Now I'm not talking about a person who says a fib once in a while. I'm talking about habitual liars. And mesapri lashon hara, those people again who habitually speak lashon hara. These 4 categories of people are einu makablim, pnei shechina. Even though it's true, these people could, if they scrape through the test, so to speak, they could be zocher to some form of olam haba. But that's the level of even though we could say that mi yamod b'yom adin, they got through the din, umi yatzdik b'fnei boiro, who can justify himself to be truly desired by Hashem. Because we see even these four groups of people who, l'choira, it doesn't say they don't have olam haba, but they certainly do not have this level of closeness to Hashem. That's called being Mekabel Pnei HaShechina. Okay, so there are 2 points I wanted to bring out there. So Avram Avinu, we saw, because he challenged Hashem's, he showed a lack of bitachon in Hashem when Hashem told him that he was going to go down to Mitzrayim, and also because he made a pact with Avimelech which was not at Hashem's command. And because of that pact that he made, carry on now in Hebrew, Omelo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said to him, Chayecha Bayolai she'ani masher besimchas bonecha shivas doiros. I am going to hold back from your children the simcha of your children. Your children are not going to receive the simcha for 7 generations. And I see here it says in the notes, what is the simcha we're talking about? Matan Torah. It's 7 generations from Avram Avinu until we got the Torah. And the reason why we didn't get it quicker is because he made this seemingly very venial slip of making a pact that he shouldn't have done. Now he goes on to the next level. Yaakov al shechora apai barochel, seeing as he got angry with Rochel, sha'amaloi, because he said, Havali bonim, give me children. So, and he was unkind to her. Amr b'medrash, it says in the medrash, v'seh lashon, and this is what it says in the medrash, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kach onim es ha'ma'ukois, this is the way you speak, you answer to those who are afflicted, because clearly Rachel, nobody had to remind her of the fact that she was barren, and that must have been very, very challenging and sad for her. So says Hashem to Yaakov Avinu, Chayecha shebonecha omdim lifnei bono, that your children will stand in front of hers. Now, this, of course, all of the children were Yaakov's Avinu. So what does it mean, your children, her children? So you have to understand that we're saying here, Shebonecha, your children, the children that you have from Leah, eventually are going to stand in front of her children, and that is that the children of Leah stood up in front of Yosef in Mitzrayim. Ulefi shenosan as Dina b'teva, and Yaakov Avinu, even ostensibly acting out of altruistic motives, hid Dina in a box, Kadei Shelo Yikochena Esav, in order that Esav, Harosha, his brother, shouldn't take her as a wife. So Afal Pi Shekavanoso Hayasa Vada Latova, even though the Yaakov Avinu's intentions were surely altruistic, Ach Lefi Shamona Chesed Me'ochiv, but because he held back kindness from his brother, which, in other words, it's true that he did a chesed, he acted out of chesed for Dina, but on the other hand, that chesed had another side to it, which was he was holding back the chesed from Esav, his brother. It's his brother. So it says in the Midrash, Amala Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says to Yaakov Avinu, Lama Mereu chesed. Mereu, the Lashon that means, why did you hold back? Mereu is like, I think, a Lashon of bad. Why did you bad chesed? It doesn't mean literally bad. It means, why did you withhold this chesed? As that's a quote from Eov. So because of that, lo bikashta lasia derech heta. You did not want to marry her off b'derech heta. Yaakov's daughter was Dinah. You didn't want to marry her off, albeit to Esav, but it would have been in a kosher way. It would have been a proper kosher marriage. So, okay, you didn't want to do that. You hid it from Esav. Harei hi nis'es b'derech iso. She is going to be married by derech iso. As we know that the story that Shechem came and basically abducted and was ma'anis Dinah, took her back to the camp, back to Shechem, and as a result of that, that's what happened. His daughter ended up being in a situation of ones, was forced into a relationship, because that was the punishment for Avram Avinu. Again, seemingly very minor infractions, but the punishment was very severe, and all again to illustrate this idea that around the Kodesh Baruch Hu, the storms rage very mightily, and Hashem is medaktek. He's exacting with his tzaddikim, with those great people in this world, to the ultimate degree. Now, what about Yosef? Lefisha Amar L'Sar Hamashkim. Yosef said to the Sar Hamashkim, Ki im zochatani itcha. He asked him to remember him, when he got out of prison. If you remember, Yosef interpreted the dream of the Sar Hamashkim, the chief of the wine tasters, he interpreted the dream to say that he would be released from prison. And before he went, he asked him to remember him to Paro, to get him out of there, to put in a good word. So as a result of that, Netosfu lo shtei shonim, 2 years were added to his sentence. K'ma'amrim zichron levrocha, it says over there in the Medrash, Yosef Atzmo, al shechonat es oviv beli rishusoi, shel mokom olafi sheshama avdecha avinu v'shosak. Oh, sorry, I skipped here. Sorry, that's the end. So that was why Yosef was given an extra 2 years in prison before he was released. And also we see that it says that Yosef himself, al shechonat, he was also punished for something else, which is he embalmed his father without Hashem's permission. Or there's another understanding, the reason why he was punished, because he said, Sheshama, that he heard someone say, Avdecha Avinu, your servant, our father. He heard his father be called your servant in front of Paro. That's what the brothers called Yaakov in front of Paro, and he didn't protest. He didn't say anything, because they, as the sons, had no right to say that he was an Eved. It's true that, in a sense, that would be true, that he was, quote unquote, Paro's Eved, but it's not for the children to say. They can't say, our father who is your servant. And Yosef didn't protest. Lama kedeis le ulama de geis le. Okay, I have to see the Gemara over there. So because of this, he meis lifnei achiv, he died before his brothers. David, let's go down the line now. David was also punished. Lefi shekara livdivrei Torah zemiros. David called divrei Torah zemiros, songs. So Ne'anash, he was punished. Shenikshal bedova Uzzah, that he stumbled in the matter of Uzzah, which I'll tell you about in a second, v'nistar bevo simcha, and as a result of that, the simcha was mixed in with grief. Now, he brings down in the note here, again, what did David do that was wrong? He said, divrei Torah, he called them zmiros. Zmiros hoyuli chukecha. Zmiros hoyuli chukecha. Kodesh Baruch Hu, your chukecha, your laws, to me, they were like songs. So, David HaMelech, David is Naim Zmiris Yisrael, he composed most of the Tehillim. David was a musician, David was a poet. So that sounds like a very nice poetic sentiment. What was so wrong with that? What was so wrong to say to Hashem, your chukim, your laws were songs to me. They were so beautiful. They sang to me. I mean, one would think the other way around, that if a person treats the Torah as something very heavy and prosaic, that would be a fault. What's wrong? What's the problem with being in giving poetic rein to one's feeling and expression of thanks that the Torah sings to him? Oh, so it says this. Dorash Rava. The Gemara says, "Mipnei ma ne'anish David." Why was David punished? Mipnei shekol divrei Torah zmiros. As we said before, zmiros hayu l'chukecha. Your chukim HaKadosh Baruch Hu were songs to me. That's in Psalms. Tehillim Kuf Yud Tes 119. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to David, Divrei Torah shekosu behem hisif einecho bo ve'einenu. Blink your eyes and they're gone. That says in Mishlei. They are so, how do you say, so evanescent. They are so transitory. They're so mufshat. They're so removed, abstract, so difficult to hold down. Because blink your eyes for a second and they're gone. That's a posuk of Mishlei. Ataka reotam zmiros. You're calling those songs. Hareini, and we'll have to come back to again understand why that is. That the quality of how difficult they are to hold on to, how easy they are to escape from a person. You can't call them a song. So, Hareini machshilecha, says a Kodesh Baruch to David HaMelech, I'm going to trip you up, but Dava, in something sha'afilu, tinoka shel beis Rabban yorim, that even, so Yodim, excuse me, that even tinoka shel beis Rabban, meaning even Cheda yingalach, even little kids in Cheda, they know not to do this. And you, David HaMelech, with all your knowledge and with all your wisdom, you are going to stumble. I'm going to let you stumble and make a mistake in something that even a small child knows not to do. How do we know this? Dichsiv, because it says in the Pasuk, Ulivnei Kohas, Lo Nasan, the Bnei Kohas, last week's Parsha. We're talking about the parts of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, that were given, how the work was divided up in transporting them. And it says that the other tribes were given agalot, were given wagons. And we'll come back to this word agalot in a moment. They were given agalot, they were given wagons to transport the parts of the Mishkan. But the Bnei Kohas lo nasan, they were not given agalot. Why? Ki avodas hakodesh alehem beketef yis'u. Theirs with the holy work, they carried the Mishkan on their shoulders. They carried the Aaron, or really the Aaron carried them, as we'll see. But they weren't given Agolot because they had to carry the holiest parts of the Mishkan, the Aaron, etc. And that's Bamidbar Zion, that's last week's Parsha and Parshas Noso. So, Ve'ihu, and what did David HaMelech do? He placed the Aaron HaKodesh in an Agalah. And the story goes like this. When he was bringing the Aaron HaKodesh up from Shiloh to Yerushalayim, so he put it in this Agalah. And every child knows that you're not supposed to do that, because every child read last week's Parsha and says that you don't put the Aaron in an Agalah, in a wagon. It's not the honor. It's not according appropriate honor to the Aaron HaKodesh. So what happened was that the Agalah seemed to move the Aaron seemed to move in this wagon, and Uzzah, one of David's soldiers, one of his servants, he saw the Aaron and he was frightened that it was going to fall. He put out his hand to steady it and he died. And this, of course, tremendously dampened, to say the least, the joy of bringing the Aaron up to Yerushalayim. So the question is, what is the idea? What's this all got to do with one another? When you've got David HaMelech, because he called Shemiros Hayulu Chukecha, that your Chukecha, your Chukim, your law, Kodesh Baruch Hu, your Torah, seem to me like songs. Because he said that, what is the connection between the mistake, the flaw, the sin, and the punishment of David HaMelech making this fundamental mistake and putting the Aaron into an agalah, into a wagon, which he shouldn't have done. Of course, every Cheder child knows you're not supposed to do that, it says in the Parsha. What's the connection between the sin and the punishment? It seems all very disconnected. let's talk about song for a second. All music in the world works within a fixed system. Now, that system may seem, we know, the Western diatonic scale is something very common to us. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's something that's obvious to us. That scale is very natural. And we know that to step outside that, and however far you can go further and further east, and everything sounds very atonal and discordant to the Western ear. But I promise you, to some Nepalese goat herd, whatever, or some Japanese no player in one of their bands over there, their orchestras over there, that even though to us it might sound like a cacophony, to them it's harmony. It all makes sense. It all makes sense. So again, there's a Western idea of harmony, and there's an Eastern idea of harmony, many different systems. But to each culture, its sense of harmony is very restrictive. What do I mean? Music cannot allow anything outside this, let's say this circle, this fixed, contained system. For example, we all know, I hope, the famous Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, right? Which goes how? Da 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 da, da 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 da. Now, if I go da 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 da, da 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 da, fingernails on the blackboard. It's something that we can't tolerate. Why? Because we have this fixed system, this circle. The word shir, interestingly enough, for a song, even though here he calls it zmiros, but the word connected with song, which gives us an insight into the idea of song, the word shir actually means a circle. Shir means two things in Hebrew. It means a song and it means a circle. Why? Well, we've just explained. Because a song basically works within this fixed system, and also the nature of a song is that it's something which the beginning is tochav b'soifo. The beginning always comes back to the end, or when you get to the end, you get to the beginning of a song. In every song, there's always going to be, you go out, let's say in the more simple kind of songs that we know in popular music, there's a verse, there's a chorus, there's what they call the middle eight, there's another verse, there's a chorus, but everything always comes back. It's a fixed system. The whole of the idea of the Torah is blink and it's gone. It's something evanescent. It's something that you cannot put into a circle. So that's the idea of the punishment. David HaMelech, beautiful as the Torah was, to him, he tried to conceptualize it as being something within a fixed system. And that was a big insult to the Torah. And therefore the punishment was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, allowed him to make a slip up in something which every school child knows, and he put it into what? An agalah. The word agalah comes from the Hebrew igul, which means a circle. Every wagon travels on a circle. So to speak, that's the picture of the mistake of David HaMelech. He took something supernal, something transcendent, the chukim of the Torah, and he made it ride on this fixed system, on an agalah, on an igul, on something which is a limited system. As beautiful as songs are, but as we've tried to explain, it's a limited system. And the Torah is above and beyond, and specifically the chukim. Chukim hayu li, zmiros hayu lechukecha. Chukim, a chuk, is that part of the Torah which is beyond our ability to understand its rationale. So those deepest ideas of the Torah cannot possibly be connected to a fixed system, the system of music, however beautiful that system might be. It's not possible to express a person's connection with Torah in anything as limited as song. Okay, so we'll leave it here for this week. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll carry on next week. All the best.